to Asia Gaming Brief's Face-to-Face series. Today I'm talking with Tsai. She's the managing partner of JCT Holdings and also a member of the C3 Gaming Consortium. We're going to be talking about what the future of the gaming floor might look like and how it would really help operators if regulators could be more flexible in their approach to allow for true innovation on the casino floor. So thank you very much for joining us today, Jane. It's great to have you with us. I wanted to start off by talking about the new C3 gaming venture. I wonder if you could walk through a little bit about the ideas behind that and what you're hoping to achieve.
Well, the C3 gaming initiative is really Andrew Klebnow's brainchild. But just, as with everybody else, having to readjust how they do business in a pandemic situation, I kind of felt it was necessary as well for, myself as an independent consultant to branch out a little bit more. So I still continue my own independent consulting, but the advantage of being part of a consortium network is that if there are opportunities where we can all collaborate together, then we try to work together. And so it just, there's a lot of work that's out there that is virtual. It's really hard to be in front of people at the moment right now. So you can't be across all the opportunities that might be available out there. And so a virtual network will get you just expand that footprint a little bit further. And, like with any brick and mortars type of business, you have to start expanding, start finding new ways to do business in a new age. So that was just the step.
And how do you see, obviously, the recovery in Asia has been a lot more protracted than anybody thought. How do you see that playing out over the rest of the year?
I would love to be optimistic and say that there's definitely growth on the horizon coming back. I do think that has to be weighted with a certain amount of reality until the vaccine is more prevalently available across Asia and until more people get vaccinated. It is going to be tough for opening up further. In addition, with the new variants that are coming out, the longer people go unvaccinated, the more likelihood there are of different variants. And notably, governments are trying to do what they can to be as prudent as they can to protect the general population. That obviously will affect any gaming operator, regardless of what jurisdiction you're in. So I do think it's still going to be tough for the next few months. But as the vaccine rolls out further and faster, and more different types of vaccines are available to people in Asia, then I think that starts to get a little bit more optimistic. I do think that it's not just on the operators themselves to be, to having to address this. I think it really does require the government to also be, they're in a tough position. They have to be mindful of protecting the population, but at the same time trying to protect, business revenues. And so that's not an easy path to walk for anybody.
No, absolutely. And are you confident that the pent-up demand will be there when casinos and travel eventually reopens?
Oh, I think even more so. I think the pent-up demand, because, every single day, despite a pandemic, people's disposable incomes are going up in the region. The economy is still moving, and we're social creatures by nature. Humans are social creatures by nature. And so getting out, seeing people doing things together and being able to enjoy times to offset all the work that which people have to do with in our daily lives, I think that demand is going to be even greater. And if you take a look at Las Vegas, when Las Vegas started to slowly open back up again here as an example, the demand was just off the charts. All of a sudden everybody just showed up. Which, I believe that's the same thing that will happen across Asia. I do feel, though, that the governments in Asia need to be mindful about the fact that while the demand is definitely going to be there and it's definitely going to come back, that they need to be a little bit more open to the different types of entertainment and different types of gaming that's going to be allowed. Because the reality of the situation is, just as business has slowly started to change with the pandemic, the tastes of the consumers and the type of consumers they're going to be able to attract, the consumption of entertainment type gaming, whether it's gaming or non-gaming entertainment, has changed and it will continue to change. So the governments and regulators across the region need to be, mindful of that and try to be a little bit more open-minded because it's tough as an operator to try to diversify your offerings when you're not allowed to diversify your offerings.
What kind of things do you think they should be looking at?
Well, there's different types of EGTs that are now available. Skill-based gaming that's out there. That's definitely something that's huge, and allowing the operators to repurpose portions of their properties. I mean, I believe that there's several markets where they were mandated by their operating licenses to provide a percentage of X type of facilities and X type of facilities. I think we need to go back and relook at that, because those requirements at the time that licensing was developed was a very different market. I mean, we're in some cases it's almost 20 years ago now, in some of the markets that those laws were put into place, and so you have to look at allowing them to repurpose the floor for things like more non-gaming type of entertainment things. Everything from amusement parks to e-gaming to those types of things, because we know that the one really strong metric, which always is an indicator of a property's performance, is length of stay. And the more things you have on your property, the more diverse the entertainment offering is, the longer the stay. And that applies to mass or VIP gamers. I think it's common sense. You got more things for me to do, I will stay longer, and therefore I will spend more with your property, period, dot, end of sentence. It's not rocket science. But if you as an operator are not allowed to do that, then your hands are almost tied and you're being asked to develop, to kind of grow in a restricted environment. So,
is that easier for some jurisdictions than others? I mean, obviously there's limits in Macau, for example, to how much space you've even got to be able to offer some of these things. Where would you see was better placed?
Well, I mean, space, in terms of, you're talking about physically developing new entertainment offerings. I think that a lot of the operators, with their additional openings, they were opening facilities that they were required to by their licenses. If the government had been a little bit more flexible, I don't know that some of those offerings were necessarily needed in Macau per se. I mean, there's already such a huge volume of conference and convention space there that I think far outstrips the demand. That might be something that could be looked at, so that they give the operators the opportunity to be innovative, to add something new, add something different. And I have no idea I'm not going to comment on an operator strategy, what type of entertainment they should be adding, but there's things out there which would just change the face of making Macau a destination market. There are different types of tourism out there. There's medical tourism out there. There's amusement parks that are out there. There's the e-gaming, again, as I mentioned, or esports, I should say. There's just so much potential for different types of entertainment to be offered.
Obviously, we have another issue in Macau, which is a lot of the integrated resorts there. They have a large chunk of their properties has been dedicated to VIP gaming, VIP assets, VIP facilities. Yep. That sector of the market, it doesn't look like it's coming back anytime soon for a myriad of different reasons. What happens to those assets? What should they be able to do with those?
I think that across the board, whether you are VIP or mass, again, like I said, it's a universal problem. One, you have to have people vaccinated in order to be able to get them in. That's step one. I mean, so that vaccination campaign needs to be quite aggressive out there, and much more far-reaching than it has been. And then two, you have to be able to repurpose your floor space or your general resort facility as you see fit in order to create that kind of unique experience and diversification, to distinguish yourselves from your neighbors, to distinguish yourself from other international markets in the area. For those VIP facilities, for example, I mean, you saw, and this is just a completely hypothetical scenario, but I mean, you saw banks and so forth start to set up different branches of their business in different locations, and they were allowed to do so to try to stave off, to say, if you had if you had a pandemic issue in one part of the property, it doesn't necessarily mean it affects the entire other part of the property. So it may be as radical as, dividing up the operations, into internal mini resorts, if you will, to keep people within a certain space, so that way, if there is an outbreak, you don't shut down the entire facility. I don't know. That's just me talking out loud, thinking outside the box. But I just think the important thing is that the operators need to be given the opportunity to do what they see fit.
You mentioned regulators need to be more flexible and more open to new ideas. How do you see the Philippines in that light? Because obviously they have seen, they're desperate to raise income, and they seem to be willing to entertain all kinds of new ideas. Do you think that any of the others may also go that route, or this is very much Philippines specific?
Well, the nice thing about the Philippines is the fact that they are willing to entertain different types of ideas. And look at different ways of doing business, means that they could be almost, if you will, a test case that would share information that people by watching see what happens in the Philippines as they diversify. How does that affect the business? So that might be some good. There might be some good learnings there for the other countries. I think the tough part with the Philippines is that they've been undergoing so many political changes there, and regulatory changes there, that it's a bit difficult to anticipate what the next change will or won't be and how stable it is or isn't. So as an operator, that makes it kind of tough also to know what you can and can't do, because heaven forbid you start putting the money and investments into something moving forward, and then only to have some things in the marketplace change that prevent you from seeing that through to finality. Because you're talking about, in some instances, to repurpose a part of a facility or to add additional facility, there's a significant investment dollars, and you want to have some reassurance that the regulatory climate is going to be favorable to allowing you to operate that within a reasonable time to recoup whatever you've invested. So I think that the Philippines will be interesting to see if they can get some stability around the regulations there, and some stability and confidence for the operators. I think that'll be an interesting case to watch.
Right. If I had to put you on the spot and ask, what do you think is the biggest thing post-pandemic that will have changed on the gaming floor?
That's a good question. The biggest thing that will have changed on the gaming floor, aside from the physical partitions,
yeah.
Honestly speaking, that's taken people some time to get used to, is having physical partitions in some places. Yeah. Because the whole idea about gaming is to be amongst the environment, so the partitioning of, I think the biggest change is going to be on how often people do consume the gaming products for which they're currently consuming. Before, when you had no regard for any kind of worries about how many people there were there on property or who else you're standing next to and so forth and so on, you kind of move about a lot more freely and probably, are a little bit more lax and relaxed in your spend. I think as, you start to get more cautious about your own physical environments and so forth, that sometimes just by nature, you're protective. And when you get protective, then you probably most likely will get equally as protective about your wallet, potentially. So it'll be interesting to see if, on an individual basis, the trends that we've been seeing in the VIP or the trends we've been seeing in mass play, does it stay consistent? Does it still stay that way? But that's where I would be curious. Is there any kind of trending that maps to the rhetoric that's in the marketplace about pandemic spread or not spread? It's going to sound kind of funny, but we've seen little seasonal blips based upon holiday promotions and so forth. You'll see the increase in the excitement about people and their spend patterns. So with other big news type things, are those affecting the gaming play as well too? I think that'll be interesting to watch. I think that this is kind of an exciting time. It's going to sound really odd to say that in such difficult circumstances that it makes it exciting, but I think only in difficult type situations do you get the chance to really innovate. Do you get something that's really pushing the norm? Do you get something that's and this sounds terrible, almost wreaking so much havoc that you have to look at things differently. And that kind of, from those kinds of adversities, do you kind of find real innovation? When you can't do something, then you find innovative ways to be able to do it. And that to me is exciting.
Thank you for joining us today. Please tune in every Friday for our series of interviews with thought leaders in Asia's gaming industry.